transforming bilateral benefit as a mitigation. The emission. Planet all over the world, which is today we have Kitchener devolution is, and this is one of the catalysts. Million people. We have also using technologies and early warning system to DB effort.
Want to
see.
Good morning, how are you?
100 million US. And we are happy.
Good morning, everyone.
Areas.
We'd like to welcome you to our event this morning, Energy for Sustainable Development and Food Security in Africa, which is being co-hosted by AUDA NEPAD, together with the N8 group of universities. My name is Rudoma Kunike. I work with the African Union Development Agency, AUDA NEPAD, based in Johannesburg, South Africa, leading the Division on Technical Cooperation and Advisory Services. At this point in time, I'd like you to help me make welcome to our honorable guests who are going to give us some welcome remarks. I want us to put our hands together and invite to the podium Madam Estherine Futebong, who is the Director of Program Innovation and Planning Directorate at AUDA NEPAD. Madam Estherine Futebong, you are most welcome. We will also have joining us online Professor Colin Bain from the University of Durham, which is part of the N8 group of universities, who will also give us a welcome statement. But for now, let us make welcome to Madam Estherine Futebong. Madam Estherine, you have the floor.
Job creation at the area.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Good morning, everyone, to the colleagues who are online and those who are here. This is the first session in today's site event, so I think the hall is slowly filling in. But we want to thank those who are online who already joined the meeting. Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, I'm really delighted on my behalf and on behalf of the NEPAD CEO to welcome you all to this Energy for Sustainable Development and Food System. Food security in Africa side event that we are having this morning, and we are co-hosting this event with the N8 universities of the UK. This side event is being held in collaboration with our partners, as I just said, the ENED universities, and we will hear more about this partnership later on. This is in recognition of the critical role that research plays in providing evidence-based advisory services to inform policy design, as well as the design of investment programs at country level. Today is Energy Day, and I think this subject is so important for the African continent. You know, energy production and use are the first drivers of climate change. It has been argued. But also they are the cornerstone of socioeconomic development. And this is particularly relevant for the African continent at the stage of development that we are in. As the call for countries to move away from fossil fuel to green energy sources deepens, there is a need to ensure that our member states are adequately capacitated to do so. However, while member states have to deal with the issues of energy security, energy affordability, as well as, of course, the Paris Agreement call to reduce energy-related emissions, for many African countries, the challenge remains access to energy. Our member states still have to deal with this significant challenge, as well as the challenge of access to finance to transition from fossil fuel to cleaner energies. Our member states, therefore, need to know what opportunities exist within the green energy space and how they can tap into them. We need innovative solutions for low-carbon power systems and capacitating our member states for the design and implementation of green energy solutions. Of course, within the context of a just energy transition for Africa and the global south. Through the AUD and NEPAD partnership, and the NED, as I said earlier, these are the most research-intensive universities in the north of England, and we are really proud to have this collaboration with them to ensure that the research that they do are drivers of socioeconomic growth in African member states. This platform is one of collaboration, ensuring that we can link African research institutions, African students to these universities so that they can benefit from the expertise that is there, but also for the NED universities to be able to reap the benefits from working in close collaboration with African institutions. As we mark the Energy Day today at COP27, it is critical for us to reflect on how we can strengthen its capacities in key areas such as energy and food security, infrastructure and climate change adaptation. How do innovations bring about real change in the life of many people around the world, and in particular in Africa? Although one of the CAADP Malabo goals, and CAADP, of course, is the African Comprehensive Agricultural Program, is to end hunger by 2025, food security still remains a critical challenge for the continent, mainly because of the vulnerability of our food systems to shocks such as those induced by climate change. Our food security goals can be achieved much faster if efforts are increased towards provision of cheap, cleaner energy to support not only production, but the entire value chain from farm to fork. Of course, the whole discussion on food systems as we have it today. Both Agenda 2063 and the SDGs 2030 recognizes the challenges of access to energy. So Goal 7 of the energy aims at achieving universal access to affordable energy, while Agenda 2063 Goal 1, 7, and 10 have targets of 50% increase in electricity generation, 50% increase in distribution, and 70% of Africans having access to electricity by 2023. I think we can all agree that this is a significant call. We are falling significantly short of achieving these targets, particularly the one of 70% having access to electricity by 2023. But that's why we are here, and that's why we are going to be hearing of some of the solutions, some of the research results that are coming out from the collaboration with the N8 University, and how these can be scaled up so that we can endeavor to meet these targets. In recognition of the importance of getting to this target, NEPAD is doing some programs. Particularly, we are piloting the installation and deployment of solar PV generation technology at the Jalan University in Sierra Leone. In Sierra Leone, about 10,000 households have been reached in terms of providing rural electrification to communities. As we conclude, as I conclude my statement, we'd just like to put a few points that throughout this conversation we should reflect on them. One will be to look at the importance to provide the evidence that our governments need in order to make informed decisions. For example, evidence in how climate change is impacting energy supply and food security, and what can be done to ensure increased access to clean energy sources. It will also be important that we reflect on how this evidence will be followed up in terms of actions to ensure real transformation of the food system and the energy nexus. And lastly, and we have been hearing this all the last 2 weeks now, we need to massively scale up investments in clean, renewable energy as part of Africa's energy future. And those investments, hopefully, should be equitable and grant-based for the energy transition that we need. Obviously, private sector investment will be encouraged because that is the only way we can scale up and reach the masses. But there are certain areas, like in our rural areas, where we need rural electrification. And I think for that, we need public investments to be able to bring the situation to the 70% that Agenda 2063 and the Africa we want is expecting. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Esserine, for those opening remarks and for giving us the context in which we are having our discussions this morning. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, please help me make welcome to Professor Colin Bain, who is Vice Provost Research and Professor of Chemistry at the University of Durham, which is part of the N8 group of universities. He will give us an opening statement. Professor Colin Bain, the floor is yours.
It's a great pleasure to add my welcome to that of Madame Esserine to the delegates to this side event today on behalf of the N8 universities. So 3 of the themes, the energy, sustainable development, and food security, have been key themes of the N8 since its foundation 15 years ago. We're just celebrating our 15th birthday. The N8, as has been mentioned already, is a consortium of 8 research-intensive universities in the north of England. 15 years ago, we decided that we should collaborate much more closely, share expertise, but also try and build partnerships as a collective group of universities with other researchers around the world. For many years, we have had individual links with different groups in the African continent. I think those of you who were at the COP26 event last year will have heard of some of the work that was done between Sheffield University and colleagues in Kenya in the area of agrivoltaics, which is trying to get 2 crops from the same land, 1 crop of energy and 1 crop of fruit and vegetables, and how that work then demonstrated that you could actually increase yields from the shading that one got from, or partial shading from solar cells, at the same time as generating renewable energy in a way that could be rolled out locally into communities around the country and around the continent. And so these, in recognition of these links we had, we've been working with AUDA and NEPAD for many years. That was formalized 3 years ago in this partnership agreement between AUDA and NEPAD, and that led to this to the first joint event at the COP26 meeting in Glasgow last year. We're very pleased to welcome our colleagues from Africa to that event. And it's marvellous to see that we're continuing that collaboration with the event today in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt. I think characteristics of this collaboration, I think, is very much one of mutuality, where we recognise that all partners bring expertise and knowledge to the partnerships. We very much enjoy working with research colleagues at universities and institutions in Africa. And I think another key principle is one of engagement of communities, of local government, of businesses and other stakeholders in the creation of research programs and in the delivery. So it's absolutely critical that we have the complete buy-in from the communities, that they identify the problems, that they are part of the creation of the solutions, because without that joint working from the very earliest stages of projects, the chances of actually having successful outcomes at the end, which can be rolled out by local governments, which are accepted by communities, are very greatly reduced. I think another point I'd like to make is that this is very much one of driving mutual benefit as well. So the learning that we get, for example, from introducing new energy technologies in Africa may also be applicable back here in the UK, and learning that we make in the UK may be applicable in Africa. So I'd like just to give a closing example of a project we're running here in Durham. So County Durham is in the northeast of England. It's a former heavy industrial area, former coal mining area. There are many hundreds of coal mines, all now closed within the county. And there are many deprived communities that formerly relied on coal mining and other heavy industry, which has now disappeared. And so we have many, perhaps different sets of challenges from the colleagues in Africa, but we have many challenges ourselves here around sustainable development, supporting these communities, trying to decarbonise, for example, heating within the county, and trying to reduce the huge social inequalities that we have in this part of the UK. And so what we're doing is we are, as both in Durham University and more broadly in the N8, we're looking at renewable energy sources, and we're particularly looking at how these abandoned mines can be used as a source of heat. And so we have a number of mine water heating projects which we're working on around particularly the northeast of England, but also more widely, where we're trying to develop the technologies, but also not just the technology, but how we actually roll out mine water heating into communities. So we're working with businesses, with communities in places like Lanchester, Gateshead, Seaham, to heat, whether it's businesses or housing. There's a big housing development in Seaham, for example, which is a coastal town in Durham, where there's a development there to try and use the waste heat that exists in old abandoned mines to drive, to be the source for heat pumps for low carbon electricity. And a lot of the challenges here are not necessarily technical ones, but the ones about how you actually roll that technology out into communities, how they are accepted by communities, which would have to perhaps change the way that they think about the way their energy is delivered, but also to businesses, housing developers, house builders, and so on, who are all part of that supply chain for example, for district heating in these communities. And so the sort of learning we get from that is something which we can then say, we can then look, for example, at other communities around the world who also are sitting in fossil fuel mining areas. And this provides a way of making a transition for those communities away from fossil fuels to renewable energy sources in a way that communities continue to benefit and not left behind by the energy transition. I was very pleased to hear Madam Esselstyn talking about a just energy transition. And that's all about ensuring that all parts of the community, all parts of society are able to benefit from that transition. I'm conscious we're running slightly behind time today. I'm not going to take up any more of your time, but just to say, just to thank those delegates who have come along to this session, to reiterate how much we value this partnership we have with AUDA and NEPAD, and to hope that it will continue to grow in strength, and to hope that you get a lot of interesting presentations and useful insights from the panel discussion that's going to happen shortly after I stop talking. So welcome everyone, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to join you in this session.
Yes, let us go ahead and give Professor Colin Boehner another round of applause. Thank you so much, Prof, for those remarks. We are glad that you were able to join us online, and we just want to express our heartfelt thanks and gratitude for the coordination of Durham University, of the N8 group of universities. Thank you so much. At this point in time, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to, we now want to move to the next segment of our program, which is the discussion with the experts in the subject matter. So kindly allow me to call to the podium Madam Esserine to put on a different hat now and take us through the next session. Madam Esserine, you're welcome.
Thank you, Rudo, for moderating the first session that saw the opening remarks from AUD and NEPAD, and from Durham University representing the N8 universities. Let me actually also join you in thanking Professor Ben for the collaboration with Durham University over the years, and for the work that they do in coordinating the NA universities in this partnership. So we will move now to our panel discussion, and we have a very, very, very high-level panel made up of people who are very, very knowledgeable in this subject. We will be looking through the different presentations of the panelists at a number of questions that they will be responding to. These questions will include how climate change impacts energy supply and food security, how can we address climate change concerns and the urgent need for energy resources, how we can enhance citizen engagement in addressing problems related to energy and food security in Africa, how we can develop a resilient and sustainable food systems in Africa, and lastly, how we can transfer the research findings into policy documents. All the speakers will be speaking to one or two or several of these questions. So it is my immense pleasure to welcome Professor Ashraf Usman of Durham University to the forum. Please give him a big hand. Thanks, Prof. Let me welcome also Dr. Rebecca Sacco of the University of Leeds. And let me welcome Mr. Abera Ndesho, who is the lead the Ministry of International Affairs. Thank you. Thank you. We will have the other panelists join online. And I don't know if Professor John Lovett is there. Prof, are you online?
I'm online and I can hear you. Thank you, Sri.
Thank you very much. We'll also have Dr. Manav Roy, who is from the University of Lancaster. He's also joining virtually. Prof. Manoy, are you online? Dr. Manoy, can you just indicate if you are online? Okay, well, I think, okay, all right, you're online. Thank you very much. Thank you. So without much ado, because these are really interesting, this is a very interesting panel, and so I won't take much time but go right straight into calling them for their presentations. So I will start with Professor Ashraf Usman, whom we have been working with over the years as AUD and NEPAD, and who is doing really, really interesting work in terms of integrated solutions to the energy food system nexus. Prof.
Thank you very much, Atrim. And yes, of course, I'm very grateful to ODA and NEPAD for the collaborations over the years. And yes, I will give you an example of one of the collaborative research we are doing with ODA and NEPAD. Okay. Which is the particular area we are collaborating is on wind energy for sustainable development in Africa, and how we can address the impact of climate change on energy supplies. So one of the main challenges in Africa, as we all know, that's we have the total population lacks access to electricity supply. In half of the population in Africa lack access to electricity supply, and the supply lacks the demand in 30 countries in Africa, despite the fact that 55% of the world renewable resources are in Africa, and 35% of the wind resources are located in Africa. But the installed capacity is only represent 0.5% of the world capacity. There are many obstacles which hinder the development of wind energy. One of particular challenge is that many areas in Africa that had been identified as suitable for wind turbines or wind farms are underlain by what we call them expansive soil. These type of soil are very sensitive to the change of their water content. So during wetting season or the raining season, when the water content increase, the soil is well, and during dry season, when the water content of the soil reduces, the soil shrink, causing settlement. So these seasonal movement of the soil causes damage to a lot of infrastructure in Africa, and this is evident in many parts of Africa, particularly in East Africa, from Sudan to Tanzania down to South Africa. And this is makes infrastructures or designing infrastructures for wind turbines are very challenging. So foundations for wind turbine are most high risk element in the design, and this is worse because there is no clear guidelines or design codes on how to design these sort of infrastructures or foundations for wind turbines in African soils. Therefore, we have this partnership with ODA and NEPAD, and we, a couple of years ago, we started a project called Developing Performance-Based Design for Foundation System of Wind Turbines in Africa, Wind Africa. And we are lucky to have generous funding from the UK Engineering and Physical Research Council, so we got around 1.47 million pound of the budget of this project. And we work in partnership with IBAT and with several universities in the UK and around the world, and most importantly, with a couple of universities in Africa, University of Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, University of Khartoum in Sudan, and University of Pretoria in South Africa, and many partners from industry. So the main objective of this project is to try to come up with guidelines or rules or manuals for designing the foundations of wind turbines in African soils. And the other thing is to try to understand the impact of climate change on the infrastructure of renewable energy, because as we know, in the recent years, there is extreme climate event in Africa. We have very lengthy drought seasons or dry seasons and very heavy rain and flooding in some part, and this has had implications on the infrastructure of renewable energy. So in this research, we have combinations of laboratory testing of sample of soils and large-scale testing, building models of foundations, and we subject them to typical cyclic wetting and drying loads. And we have numerical models. So we took samples of soil from different parts of Africa, from Tanzania, Sudan, South Africa, and we did extensive laboratory testing to characterize this soil and try to understand how this soil, expansive soil, respond to rainfalls and respond to the wetting and drying cycles. And also we had large-scale tests in one of the sites in South Africa. We built full model of foundation. We subject them to typical loads and under different wetting and drying conditions. And the main aim of characterizing this soil and the benefit from that, characterizing the soils and also developing guidelines or design guidelines for foundation will not just be confined to wind turbines, because actually excessive movement affect many structures in Africa, particularly roads, pavements, buildings. So the impact of this research will extend beyond the energy sector. And also, as part of this project, we did a lot of training activities. So we trained researchers from various countries in Durham University, and we organized workshops, and we organized conferences, seminars, and also we have some interaction with media, or excessive interaction with media, to try to promote the public awareness and raise the public awareness about the importance of climate change and renewable energies. And also we had school visits, programs of school visits, where we talk to children about the importance of climate change. They are the future generation in the continent, and they must be well aware of the challenges we are facing in terms of climate change and energy resources. And we have this partnership with IBAT, and the aim of this partnership is to try to produce like policy documents and guidelines which could be adopted in various African countries, and also to establish like a network of researchers, scientists, policymakers, stakeholders who are focusing on implementing or try to implement or incorporating the renewable energy into national planning and funding cycles, and also looking at various technology which are very suitable in African countries. And we organized a couple of events. The last event we have last January as part of the third Africa Development Forum in Kinshasa. Last January, we have very successful sessions where we have interactions with policymakers, and we got a lot of interest about this aspect of our research. And finally, I would thank all the collaborators in these projects. There are several colleagues in many universities and in industry who contribute to this project. And thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you for that interesting presentation. With those guidelines for wind turbines, I think we are making some headway towards getting to that 70% access. We will take all the presentations, then we engage in discussions later. Let me call Professor John Lovett of University of Leeds. Prof. John, you have the floor. John will be making his presentation virtually.
Thank you very much, Madam Esserine, and also Dr. Rudo for organising the meeting. I'm going to share my screen, and what I would like to do is just give a very short presentation and then show a video from one of our massive open online courses, which I believe will be shown from the Sharm el-Sheikh end of the IT system. Okay. Hello, I'm John Lovett. I'm the Chair of Global Challenges at the School of Geography at the University of Leeds. My job is to create interdisciplinary research projects and taught courses. Today, I'll briefly introduce the work I've been involved in on bioenergy and microgrids, and then we'll show a video clip from one of our online courses. Africa is not a major contributor to human-induced climate change, but climate change has major impacts on Africa. These include impacts on large-scale energy generation, such as droughts reducing hydropower. Access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy is important for growing, processing, storing, and transporting food. Reducing traditional biomass burning in households is important for reducing killer-in-the-kitchen smoke. Small-scale renewable energy technology is now affordable and can be used to create resilient community-based energy generation and distribution networks. Technologies such as electric slow cookers can replace smoky fireplaces, and Creek in Uganda has written a cookbook of traditional recipes to go with this type of cooking. Challenges remain in capacity building, education, operation, and maintenance. Transferring research results can help with all of these, both with in-person training and online courses. I've been involved in 3 major recent projects on capacity building, microgrids, and bioenergy, partnered by the Center for Research in Energy and Energy Conservation in Uganda, the Dar es Salaam Institute of Technology in Tanzania, and the University of Mariano Ngoabi in Congo-Brazzaville. As a means to disseminate research findings and build capacity, we collaboratively created 2 massive open online courses on the FutureLearn platform. The bioenergy course was launched last year at COP26 and has now had more than 2,000 participants. And the microgrid course was launched this week, and I think we have more than 100 participants on the microgrid course at the moment. I'll now show you a clip from the microgrid course in which the microgrid design software PyEplan, which was developed by our research project, was used to design a microgrid for the Watoto orphanage near Kampala. So I'll stop sharing there, and then if you can play the clip for me, please do.
Uganda has 70% of the homes without access to electricity. This is similar to our case study of Watoto, a children's village that's 32 kilometers away from the city center. With this village, you find their homes and their children, but they have no access to electricity. And you know the challenges of having no access to electricity. That means their reading hours have been cut short, and they are also exposed to using unsafe forms of energy. So what we are working on right now is a software to help us develop sustainable and resilient mini-grids using hybrid energy solutions. So we are using Python to optimize these energy sources, and what we have developed at the end, our objective is to provide a least cost solution for energy. So we have so far implemented this case study with Watoto Homes, and we were combining solar and wind energy resources. And what we have found is a cheaper solution to connect these mini-grids. And we hope to see this also across the country.
Okay, thank you very much.
Uganda has 70%.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you for that presentation and that video that clearly shows us what can be achieved. Let me call Dr. Rebecca Sakov of the Leeds University to make her presentations now.
Good morning. I'm Rebecca Saku, a research fellow in climate change and food system. And I shall make my presentation drawing from my research experience in Ghana, the coastal savanna agroecological region, showing research findings on the effect of climate change and how local communities are using their own local means, efforts to try to tap energy, and then also discuss the way forward and how partnership and also how we can also support local communities in their own way. So we know agriculture is one of the sector that is besieged by climate change, and is also the cause of climate change. But then the issue is there is a solution within this specific context. Agriculture can also stand to provide solution to the challenges of climate change. In my study district, you find that when it comes to climate change, it's in part the rate at which farmers must irrigate their crops. So we talk about intense insolation. When the sun sets in the morning, late evening before it comes down. So there's a need to irrigate the crops, and this leads to the cost of electricity. As you see in the picture, they use generator to pump water to the field, and that depends on fuel, pre-mixed fuel, and you know the current situation. So the climate change is increasing the cost of production. Usually when we talk about food production, this particular agroecological region is also into processing. So they need this energy, sun energy, they need the wind to also process some of the food. We can talk about pepper. If you want to export chili pepper, they have to dry it. And then we have this region, then we have variability in weather condition. So when they are harvesting and they are expecting dry condition around this time, as we speak, those of us from West Africa, we can attest the rainfall condition. Lagos, Nigeria, we lie in the same latitude. So the rainfall condition now, which is supposed to be a minor season, is not occurring. So we're seeing the effect of climate change on energy. And again, we can talk about extraction of groundwater.
The pathway description per pathway 6
issue is also relevant here. We can talk about the need to extract groundwater with energy. And here, my farming communities usually have to also use human energy, but this is a sector we usually don't talk about. Human power, manpower, it's also energy that we have to classify and talk about today as we discuss Energy Day in
urban planning and planning
how can we address climate change concern? We can talk about renewable energy, solar panel.
Natural systems,
when I went to this community, there's a river close by, which is called the distributary of the Volta River.
Neighborhood mirror ecological patterns. So when we were in Botswana, Coach and I were on team.
Okay, so this community, the cost of electricity was increasing. Kwame is here when I mentioned the cost of electricity in millions. And you can imagine a smallholder farmer whose
So I think the key
income
here is that
or savings for the entire year is not even up to 100 euro. And it's supposed to pay for the cost of electricity. So they devised and came together and mobilized to write proposal, and then they got solar panel so they can be able to draw water for irrigation. And then you can see in the picture local solutions. No one is doing this for them, but their own techniques and ideas. They are able to build these small plumbing techniques to draw water from the ground to irrigate their crops. And we can also talk about the need to also, I am talking and then also advocating for smallholder farmers. Last time at the opening session, the former vice president of the US mentioned something about interest rates. If we want to provide solar solutions for farmers, look at the interest rate in Ghana. I can mention the interest rate in Ghana is 38%. If you want to give solar panel or this solar solution to farmers, and the interest rate is that high, then I think that one of the solutions that I can discuss with my colleagues here and with researchers and then the policy colleagues here is that we have to work on regulating the market, specifically reducing interest rates or work towards that is very important. And the provision of subsidies, I think, is also relevant for farmers. What I observe very often is the provision of fertilizer subsidies or seed subsidies, but I think that when it comes to energy, smallholder farmers also need subsidies in that context. How can we enhance citizen engagement? I think that as we keep talking about climate change, in some contexts, in some communities, the ideas still sound far away from them. Yes, they are aware that there are changes in the weather pattern, but we have to also engage communities to talk about what is this climate change, break the idea down to them that yes, there's a lot to do with climate change. It comes with policy, it comes with finance, it comes with changes in behavioral activities, and it also comes with engaging with policy makers in various levels. And I also talk about capacity building. I have shown you some local solutions, but if we scientists could collaborate with small communities like this to integrate their local knowledge into scientific activities, I think that innovations can be scaled up.
On the floor, yes.
I think innovations can be scaled up and for better development in the energy sector. I would want to end my submission by saying that how can we develop resilient and sustainable food system in Africa? I would want to argue that we need to also look at the gender perspective and when talking about gender, we look at the intersectionality. When you go to this community, we have different groups of farmers. And some farmers are able to afford their resources, others do not have anything at all. So when we are making intervention for communities, let's go beyond just the group word of smallholder farmers. Let's go beyond the word of gender or women. Even a woman can be rich in a village. And there are another sector of a woman who needs resources to scale up. And this is what we have to do so that resources get to the real people who need actual support when it comes to energy and food crop production or enhancing the food system. I can also talk about bringing together partners. I think Madam Estrin mentioned partnership and other colleagues mentioned partnership in their presentation. No one can do this together. So we need partners.
Thank you so much.
From
Please.
Financial sector. We need partnership from smallholder farmers, partnership from private sector, as Madam Estrin mentioned.
For my Thai. Articulation.
I am not the one talking. It's not for me. I'm sorry for this. Yeah.
Mixture
so
of
the last
solutions
point I'll mention is about
stakeholder.
also increased access to productive use of technology. There are various productive technologies in the system, as Prof has mentioned, wind, and my other colleague has mentioned an option. I've also presented on the solar panel system. We can draw from this knowledge and also use focus on fit-for-purpose solution. In a village, perhaps solar panel may not work, but in another village, wind solution may work. I want to thank you and also use this opportunity to invite you to my panel this evening, which we discuss on Coronivia joint work on agriculture and agriculture transformation. Thank you very much, Madam Esri.
Thank you, Rebecca. I can see really why you're doing such a beautiful job with your communities. Apologies for that interference, but you champion on like a woman can do, so thank you. I think that presentation I don't need to add anything to it. It was so clear, and this is what we really have to do. Yes, we are at COP having these high-level discussions,
Ocean.
But we have to take it to the communities where the need is actually felt. So thank you so much. Thank you, Rebecca. So our next presenter will be Dr. Roy of Lancaster University. He's doing it online. He's joining us virtually. Prof Roy?
Hi, good morning everyone, and I very much thank you for welcoming me in this audience. I'm talking from UK. Probably the line may be a little bit dodgy, but let me try my best. And I must thank first Madam Esterine and Rudo for organizing it. And so far we have already learned a number of high quality and top-class presentations. So what I am going to be talking about, let me just share my slide. So my presentation is about what we are calling a science in the school, in which we introduced circular processing of fecal matter to a basic school in Ghana. So the school children were involved in the design and implementation of the unit. They learned how to sort of safely manage their fecal material in the school and use that to generate energy as well as soil conditioner. They also went out to learn from industry partners, in this case, Suez System Ghana Limited. They also then, shared their knowledge with their peers as well as their parents. So I will be going to be sort of introducing this case to you to demonstrate an effort that low-income settlements, where informal toilet is the norm, where we can actually introduce the learning about the circular economy, in particular anaerobic digester in primary school, so as to sort of instigate bottom-up learning. So just a quick reflection on why sanitation in low-income settlement and why science in the school. As you are all familiar with, the situation is that using poor quality shared toilet is the everyday reality in low-income settlement. However, these toilet facilities often remain neglected in the official programs and policies. New research in this area, however, is revealing many positives that are missed. That includes potential for saving, carbon dioxide emissions. So one study recently came up with a number that at least 126 kilogram equivalent of carbon dioxide could be saved, could be captured by off-site composting of human waste generated in low-income settlements. So this needs to be changed, both for the health and social well-being of the low-income people, but also for the climate change. And innovative education is needed, and we found that schools are a vital place to begin. So, and this research came from over 7 years of research through these 3 projects. One is Recirculate, which was funded by the UK, the CRF, and this is called the Driving Eco-Innovation in Africa, Capacity Building for a Safe Water Economy. The second project was Actuate, which was a offshoot and impact-driven project of Recirculate. So Actuate stands for Accelerating the Adoption of the Circular Sanitation Demonstration System for improved health outcomes. And this Science in the School project was an outcome of this project. Earlier, we also implemented another project called the Last 100 Meter, where we found that within low-income settlements, it is within the small area of toilet users and the water user where fecal contamination actually contaminates the drinking water system. So we actually proposed that we need to safeguard that particular little space so that the good work of supplying safe water is actually delivered to the people at the point of their consumption.
Thank you. Play.
Can we address the climate change concern and urgent need for energy resources?
Next,
so
please.
Here are the two examples we wanted to share. One is we just published yesterday a blog on international water associations, and that is now UN database of the World Toilet Day, where we say that safe water to the urban poor needs circular processing of their fecal matter. So you may want to have a look when you have got a time. But I also wanted to show that the school where we have got the unit built. There is a very short 1-minute video which you can just quickly see.
Thank you.
Because, for example, in the context of Japan, we are facing nature sanitation or rapid urbanization or climate change.
Hi, Doc. We can't get the sound of the video.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Well.
Okay, so are you still hearing me? All right.
Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
Okay, so the video link is here in the presentation. So sorry, the sound didn't come through. But that was the second point I wanted to make. And so then the question is that how can we enhance citizen engagement in addressing these? So through this Science in the School project, we have demonstrated how
what's your experience in Japan
children
as
can
a
themselves become learned. They can see for themselves, and we have actually linked them with the scientific lab where fecal waste is cultured, sampling the water they drink, and they came to see this one, and they visited to the establishment industry partners, and then they produced resources to go and tell the community people. But also on the right, they also performed in the radio and television to sort of really informing the wider society. So Science in the School not only benefit the kids, but they can also mobilize the society. My final slide is that how can we actually transform research these findings into policy document? So we have been trying this critical urbanist agenda of expose, propose, and politicize. So what we have exposed through our project is that the drinking water that is supplied to the low-income community gets contaminated in the very doorstep of the people when they actually drink. On the left side, you can see the red part is showing that the water comes from very far, but really in the last 25 meters or so, the contamination of fecal material.
Elisa about the pathway 6. This is probably the keyword that
the
will
second
bring
is
us
that we
there
actually propose
at some point.
that to
And what
address
I like
this
about all these keywords is like
exposure
how
to
we organize
contamination,
COP.
what we need to do is to tackle the informal sanitation. And that's where we actually brought both tangible benefit and intangible benefit. And finally, we actually were able to sort of pitch this or work to high-level politicians. In this case, I was able to talk to the president of Ghana. Subsequently, we have managed to contribute.
I will have the speaker. Speaking. Let me introduce our.
Sorry, Prof, we just lose the connection, so I think they're trying to fix that. Thank you. While they're doing that, thanks, Prof. We did get most of your presentation, and we're really sorry for that interference. While they're fixing it, I think those who are here in person, we can hear them speak. So I would like to invite Mr. Abera. Yes, Mr. Abera? Yeah. Yes, for you too. You can speak here.
Thank you very much. We are sorry for the crisis management on the IT facilities. This is a situation where, technology has its own limitation. Everywhere you go across Europe or America or Africa, wherever you are. And we very kindly request our IT experts to fix it as quickly as possible, please. This has been the situation we were in yesterday. So we shouldn't continue this way for the next couple of days. So very briefly, I'm Abaranda Shao. I'm working in the Federal Ministry of Water and Energy as Senior Advisor to His Excellency the Minister. So very briefly to mention some of the points, appreciating for what our professors has already mentioned earlier. Yes, today we are all in a kind of, climate change and drought effect across many of the African countries and across the other world too. Ethiopia in Africa, being located in the Horn, is the second largest populous country, second to Nigeria, with a total of close to 120 million. And out of this, the total energy coverage this time in Ethiopia is not more than 48%. And as was mentioned in the video from Uganda, we are not very far. And almost, except a very few of the African countries, including Egypt, where we are in now, we are in a very critical shortage in energy supplies, more particularly in the renewable energy sources. So we are generating close to 91% of our energy from the hydro source and not more than 12% from the other renewable energy sources. Ethiopia is supposed to be, at 13 months sunshine, having, the highlands and the lowlands, and endowed with a very huge natural resources that is untapped still for the energy sector. So we have the wind energy sources in the lowland areas from the northeast to southwest of the country. We are endowed with other, wind energy sources in the other part of the highland areas in Ethiopia. But those, endowed resources are not yet, untapped and utilized for the development agenda. As you know, water and energy is supposed to be very central for the Sustainable Development Goals. in the absence of water and energy, we can't think of, sustainable development. And you can imagine all other sectors, in the absence of water and energy. And you could imagine what can happen. We are supposed to have, a very serious and very friendly policy and institutional reform. A reform that fits into the current scenario of the global, context, whereby the resources in the hands of the private business companies. So we need to make sure that our policy, environment, strategies are very friendly for investment attractions of the private companies. That is one of the very critical issues that I want to mention. In Ethiopia, more than 91 million of our communities are without having access for clean cooking stove. And they are using biomass fuels, deforesting trees. Unlike this, of course, the government of Ethiopia for the last 4 years have been working very aggressively on the Green Legacy Initiative under the leadership of His Excellency the Prime Minister, Dr. Abiy Ahmed. For the last 4 years, we have planted more than 22 billion seedlings. So this is in response to the drought and climate change effect and focusing more on nature-based solution. And the very reason for us to be serious on plantation of seedlings and trees, including fruit trees, is to make sure the nexus approach. And the plants we are planting in Ethiopia are not just for vegetation cover, rather for ensuring food securities. Fruit trees are planted. As I said, more than 20 million Ethiopian peoples, individually 15 per citizen, 15 seedlings per citizen have been planted, 22 billion, and more than 1 billion in the neighboring countries of Djibouti, in Sudan, in Kenya, in most of the East African neighboring countries. So, as I said, policy and institutional reform that fits into the private business company. The regional integration and cooperation is something that we need to look into, sustainable, energy for food security programs. Is the Pan-African agenda and regional integration and cooperation. 4 days before, Ethiopia has already started energizing Kenya. The Ethiopian-Kenyan, transmission line, the high volt transmission line has been already started, a total of close to 400 megawatt, where energy is now flowing from Ethiopia to Kenya. We have already started, working with Djibouti, with Somalia, with Sudan, with South Sudan. Given that most of our communities are living in darkness, not less than 63 million Ethiopian people are living currently in darkness. But we are a country of hope. A country of hope and a country of high moral. We are building the Great Ethiopian Renaissance Dam in the Abai River, whereby 2 of the early generation has already started powering. And the Great Ethiopian Renaissance Dam is to generate close to 5,200 megawatt in its full capacity. On this, energy is to be distributed across East African countries who are interested, to have, a true trust building between nations and a true cooperation and partnership. We Africans do have, many learning and sharing platforms. We have the AU, we have the AMCA, we have the, NEPAD, we have IGAD, we have many regional, national, local learning and sharing platforms. I truly appreciate our professors who have already presented us their evidences. Universities are created to generate evidences, right? So that our policymakers will pass an informed decision. An informed decision that truly directs our development agendas, programs, and projects. But are we really very friendly for investment attraction? Why are not many investments are coming to Africa? What's the problem with us? I don't think the science, the concept is not the problem. Rather, having a very good playground that fits to the interest of the private sector and the current global scenario is something that we are lacking. The stronger platforms, as I said, the Nexus approach. I want to mention very briefly one of our good example of a project which we have already started and financed by JEP. This project is called the DREAM project, Decentralized Renewable Energy Agricultural Modalities, we said it, DREAM. And this DREAM is to replace diesel-powered water pumps, which are currently used for irrigation projects, into solar energy. In Ethiopia alone, we have more than 500,000 of diesel-powered water pumps. You could imagine 500,000 of diesel-powered water pumps. We want to replace this with solar energy. So this DREAM project is currently working in 9 sites in Ethiopia at a pilot level, and we are working aggressively to scale it up across the country. So we need to manage our investment, fossil fuel consumption, the climate change effect. The drought also is another challenge that we are currently facing. In the eastern part of the country, close to Somalia, and on the way to Djibouti, we faced a very serious drought effect, where we lost hundreds of thousands of our cattle because of the reasons that we are not able to supply enough renewable energy and enough water for our communities. So that's my key message. We are against time. I can't take more time than this. If there are some questions, I will be available, and I'm very much happy to share with you my business card. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abera, for that very passionate delivery, and having raised so many important issues that we need to address, including, of course, the institutional and policy reforms to support investments coming into our countries. So we have heard from our panelists, very, very rich contributions from all of them. We are really pressed for time, but we cannot conclude this session without taking one or two contributions or questions from the participants. So, but please just go straight to your question. We really don't have time for long discussion. Fortunately, we have a platform that hopefully we will have all of you at another time. So let me take one or two questions. Yes, my brother here, my sister Burgess, my goodness. So many hands, but let's start first. Yes, please.
Thank you very much, Madam. My name is Muminista Badogo, Executive Director for WASCA. I have a question, and I think it is for you, Madam. We have heard about a number of pilot demonstration, research results, and I'm sure if we ask, many of us here will have also our own experiences we can share with you in terms of pilot project, success stories. The point is that, do we have a strategy for scaling up all those success stories in initiative? That's my question.
Thank you, Astrid, and thank you for the presenters for insightful presentations. My first question goes to Dr. Ashraf regarding the wind turbines. You mentioned that they are high risk, and I'd like to know if certain mitigation measures have been implemented and to what extent it has reduced or mitigated the risk. My second question to the last speaker about you mentioned the energy production, about 5,200 that can be distributed to the neighboring countries. I would like to know to what extent the political differences and tensions can impact this type of cooperation among the neighboring countries. Thank you. And whether we have already started the production. Thanks.
Thank you, Balgis. I have to say, these are very good questions coming from someone who actually won a prize, recognition as the best African scientist from UNEP. So thank you for being here, Balgis. Yeah, I know this is your field as well. Okay, let me take one from the gentleman, my brother there.
Thank you, Madam. My name is Frederick Allo. I'm from Kenya. I work with the Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries. Agriculture and Livestock. I have two questions. One is to Professor Colin. When he talked about bioenergy and microgrids, I have much more interest in the dry lands. Because this bioenergy and microgrids, when you're talking about them, then much of the dry lands actually are hardly hit with the issues of energy and with the issues of destruction of forests and destruction of the vegetation, then the component of bioenergy comes in. I would like him to give us a brief overlight, whether he has research interest in the dry lands. Okay, then the second question is to the last presenter. When we were talking about 22 billion trees, it is easy to plant a tree, but to grow it is an issue, especially in the dry lands. The key challenge in these dry areas that he's talking about, Eastern Somalia and wherever, there are no trees at all or plants. The key thing is once you cut it, that's the end of it. There's nothing that will grow again. And that's what's happening in the dryland areas. So the key thing is how can we avail or how can we make these places more or these trees available in these areas? Thank you.
Thank you. That's the last one. I really would like to give the floor.
Sorry, let me just do this, please. Thank you. Dr.
One question, yes. Short question, please.
From University of Environment and Sustainable Development, Ghana. So, we cannot ensure the just energy transition just by having the infrastructure. We also need to consider cheaper ways of providing the sustainable energy, particularly if you consider air pollution contributing to, household air pollution contributing to 1.1 million deaths in a year alone in Africa. What strategies are in place to ensure that the just energy transition is cheap, particularly for poorer households and also those living in rural communities? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will just give to, because he was one of the first to be here, so please, yes. I think Justice required that he takes the floor.
Okay. Merci beaucoup. Ma question est pour professeur Esterine. Vous avez parlé de l'implication du secteur privé. Je suis de la Côte d'Ivoire. Je représente le secteur privé. Alors, je me posais la question de savoir, est-ce que vous avez des exemples d'incitation fiscale pour que le secteur privé puisse accompagner justement les communautés pour aller vers des énergies renouvelables? Je pense notamment à l'agriculture, je pense notamment au solaire, et ainsi de suite. Parce que le secteur privé s'engage véritablement quand il y a quelque chose qui l'intéresse, quand il y a aussi du business à faire. Voilà. Merci.
Merci beaucoup pour ces questions. Donc, I think let's start, please, back to the panelists. Just answer what question was directed to you and just make your wrap-up statements. 1 minute is enough for each person? Let me start with, because the question on the private sector and the incentive, I think, Mr. Abera, you also alluded to that. So maybe you could start. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
And take the question from Madam Balgis.
Thank you very much. I think the question is very simple. Political differences should be, resolved in the political environment and in the political platform. And now, maybe more specific questions that our sister has already raised to me is something in the hands of the African Union. And there are some countries which have, claiming right and, with a little bit of, distorted outlook in the development projects we are constructing. But for me, now is a time for us to narrow down our differences and sit together and build trust amongst our African countries and work out around cooperation and integration. That's the only option we have. Collaboration is the only option we have. Otherwise, no country alone can step into any development projects.
Thank you.
All right,
Rebecca.
so I would answer the question from my colleague who mentioned about just transition. I think in my presentation, I mentioned that in rural communities, they are doing their small innovations, but I advocated that we can talk about subsidies. So in rural communities in my country, the subsidies go more towards the seed and the fertilizer. So we can shift the conversation towards renewable energy. Because I don't think one farmer in my study district can even purchase one panel, solar panel. It's not possible. So if we can discuss in terms of subsidizing or interventions, governments can take more of the loan, and then the private sector or donors can also come in. So that is one way I can mention. And also, when you listen to my presentation, I made mention that market regulation, at this rate of inflation, no farmer can go into such venture. We need to regulate the market, and this is the platform, African Union platform. African leaders need to regulate the market. They know how to do to regulate the market to bring down inflation for farmers to go into such ventures. That's the little I can add to it. Maybe my other colleagues can contribute. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I will answer the question about the risk and the safety. This is exactly why we need to do research on this area, because it's high risk. That's why the importance of research on infrastructures and foundations of infrastructure. Now we acknowledge a lot of knowledge in the last 4 years or 5 years through the work of this project, and we are working with our partners and try to develop like a standard or safety standard which can help in the deployment of wind turbine infrastructure. And,
Thank you. Is Prof. John still online? Will you have some closing remarks? Oh, and another? Oh, both of them? Okay. Right. So I think we have had a really good from the panel, but also the questions from all of you have been actually very, very good questions. From how do we share those lessons, how do we scale up political dynamics in terms of cooperation. But I think this platform and other platforms that we have as AUD and NEPAD really is an opportunity for us to share those experiences, make sure that we transfer those research findings to actionable activities on the ground, whether to the communities or on policy reforms. So some really big areas, as I said, coming from all of this is transferring of those research. We have seen different mechanisms that are being used, training, setting up of networks, awareness campaigns, and all of that. Policy and institutional reforms to enable the private sector to get in, but not only the private sector, to also look at government's own investment in these sectors, as my sister has been insisting, that the ultimate beneficiaries are the communities. But if the physical and the market's economy doesn't allow them to be able to participate, then there is a problem there. A big point has come on the issue of appropriate technologies. I think Rebecca mentioned, Professor Artford also mentioned, both in terms of local conditions, but also the soil conditions in the countries. Of course, access to finance has been raised, and the importance of a nexus approach to our development planning has come through the presentations from everyone. And lastly, why we are here, and the partnerships and collaboration within countries, among stakeholders, North-South collaboration, which is demonstrated by the partnership between AUD and NEPAD and the N8 universities, are all very, very important and key messages that have come out from this very high-level session this morning. So please join me in thanking our distinguished panelists for an excellent job. And of course, all of you for being here first thing in the morning and for the wonderful contributions that you have all made. We appreciate your presence here and your contribution to this very important meeting. There must be something? No? Okay. We will have a photo with the panelists, and if there are other announcements, Rudo is going to make them. Thank you all so much for being here.
Hey, test. Hey, test.
Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Can I call your attention, please? Invite you to take your seats. So welcome to our event on Unleashing Africa's Green Potential with the African Green Bank Initiative. We're going to spend the next hour and a half talking about the potential for green banks, particularly in Africa. We've got a full agenda and many speakers, so actually my job as moderator is very simple. I just have to manage the time. I don't think I'm even going to have time to ask any questions. So I'm going to take a couple of minutes at the start just to say a little bit about our work on green banks. Then we'll introduce the Vice President, who will make a keynote address, and then my colleague Audrey will present some slides, and then we'll call up our panelists in two panels. First, panelists from the financial institutions, and then panelists from our partner institutions. Then we'll see if we have time for some questions, hopefully from the audience. I'm sure there'll be some questions, and then we'll close up. So let me just say a couple of minutes at the start, take a couple of minutes at the start to announce our progress. This time last year, we launched a report entitled The Opportunities and Challenges for Green Banks and National Climate Change Funds in Africa. And for us, this was a very important learning point. We explored and got a better understanding of the difference or the full range of green banks, which we consider includes not only sort of formal green banks that have the ability to mobilize capital and lend money, but also national climate change funds, which have the potential simply to perhaps to raise grant money and support technical assistance. And actually, we have a very good example of that coming from Rwanda, where the Rwandans started with FUNERWA, which was effectively a green fund or a national climate change fund. And they are now in the process of transitioning to a fully fledged green investment bank, where they will actually be capitalized and be able to implement and disperse funds through various financial instruments. So it's a great example to show how that evolution can occur. And in the study that we undertook last year, we worked with 6 countries to identify potential public sector institutions that would be interested in going through this route. But we also found a great deal of interest from the private sector. And over the past year, we've seen a lot more engagement from the private sector that have shown a great willingness to engage in this. And this now means we're talking increasingly with existing banks, existing commercial banks that want to open up a window within their operations that would focus on green banks or on green lending to, and I know we say green lending, but actually what we really mean now is Paris-aligned lending to projects that are both low carbon and climate resilient. And then just my final point on green banks, and one of the reasons why we're so excited about it, is that we have the opportunity to mobilize resources and create institutions at a national level. So that's potentially 54 institutions across the African continent, and then multiples of that if we have more private sector entities that want to get involved. But why that's really exciting, these institutions can tap into local currency flows. They can tap into diaspora finance and local institutional capital, and they can lend in local currency. And we know that lending in local currency, when you have revenues in local currency, is critical. It's a great way of managing that risk, and it's continuously a barrier to investing in many of these kinds of activities. So those are a couple of reasons why we think the green bank potential is really tremendous for Africa, and we're greatly encouraged by the progress that we see with the development of green banks in a number of other countries, developed countries as well as in developing countries. And so with that brief introduction, let me call upon Dr. Kevin Kariuki, our Vice President for Climate Change and Green Growth, also Power and Energy, and invite him to make some keynote remarks. VB, would you like to come to the podium? Yeah, thank you very much.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First, allow me to welcome you all to this event organized by the Africa Development Bank on the theme, Unleash Africa's Green Potential with the African Green Banks Initiative. As you may already know, increasing the level of climate finance channeled to the African continent is a priority area for the African Development Bank's Climate Change and Green Growth Strategic Framework that we adopted last year. Through this strategic framework, the bank seeks to increase or to facilitate increase in Africa's access to global climate finance from the current 3% to 10% by 2030. The low access to climate finance, which amounted to only about 20 billion last year, or in 2020 rather, significantly pales the demand which the 2022 Africa Economic Outlook projected at about $125 billion annually through to 2030. And this is despite the fact that the continent is home to 9 out of 10 and 35 out of 45 most vulnerable countries in the world, most of which also have low adaptive capacity to the impacts of climate change. Furthermore, and this is why we are coming here, most of the climate financing in Africa is provided through public funds, which account to about 87% of the total climate financing flow into the continent. The participation of the private sector, based on what I've just mentioned, in the climate finance agenda is therefore rather limited. Yet, it is projected that up to 75% of the 3 trillion required for implementation of Africa's nationally determined contributions by 2030 could potentially come from the private sector. It is indeed in this context that measures to increase the participation of the private sector in mobilizing climate finance at scale are being considered at the bank. Hence, the African Development Bank is developing several innovative financing solutions to attract more private climate finance in Africa. This includes the Green Banks model, which is potentially a powerful tool for reducing costs and mobilizing private sector investment in climate action in Africa. The Green Banks initiative falls under the umbrella of what we call the Africa Financial Alliance on Climate Change, or AFAC, which seeks to bring together Africa's financial ecosystem to play an important role in the climate finance mobilization. More specifically, the bank has conceptualized the Green Banks initiative to capitalize Africa's commercial banks and help them develop specific strategies and tools to identify and invest in green projects. The development of this initiative is therefore informed by an assessment carried out by the bank last year in partnership with the climate investment funds on the potential of green banks in 6 African countries, namely Benin, Ghana, Mozambique, Tunisia, Uganda, and Zambia. The assessment revealed that green banks have significant potential for attracting new sources of catalytic funds when supporting low-carbon, climate-resilient development through blending capital and mobilizing local private investment for green investments in Africa. Through this initiative, the bank is creating an ecosystem of local green banks working together under the umbrella of AFAC, which is with a view to putting the banking sector at the center of climate action in Africa. The African Green Banks Initiative will help mobilize significant resources, both domestically and externally, to address specific climate financing challenges faced by African countries. It will also help build capacity of local financial institutions to build a robust pipeline of bankable green projects while de-risking investments and entrenching long-term investor confidence towards climate resilient and low-carbon projects in Africa through investing in key sectors such as energy efficiency, renewable energy, climate-smart agriculture, resilient infrastructure, and nature-based solutions. I am therefore delighted to launch the Africa Development Bank's African Green Banks Initiative as an innovative tool to actualize Africa's green potential and enable African banking sector to go green. In conclusion, I call on African financial institutions and climate finance practitioners present here today to share with us your thoughts and insights on the potential and future of green banks in Africa. I thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much indeed, VP, for those kind words and for setting us off for this event. So now we'll move to the second part, which will be a presentation from my colleague Audrey Cynthia, who will give you some details about how the African Green Banks Initiative is going to operate and the key stages that we're at. So Audrey, may I invite you to take the podium, please?
Thank you very much, Garrett. Good morning. It is with a considerable pleasure that I'm here today and that I'm coordinating the Africa Green Bank initiatives at the African Development Bank under the visionary of President Akinwumi Adesina and his executive leader as the VP, Kevin Kariuki. Let me give you a little bit of overview of what is the Green Bank model, because it's also of importance that you to make it very understandable, and you will see it's more easier and more simple than it seems. Okay. Make sure is it working? I need some support because it's not working. I tried to change the slides. Okay, sorry. So the green, just to start, before you can see the presentation, the Green Bank model is a green bank is a specialized financial institution with a focal lens. It's the focal point for climate investment. It's allowed to scale up domestic investment into sustainable projects, and by creating a pipeline of risk-adjusted return projects which are expected for the private investor to step into those transactions. And how they do that, they use a small amount of public fundings to de-risk the transaction and to allow private investors to step in those. Those local banks, national green banks, they are also their investment strategy is completely aligned with national strategy with NDC's implementation. More importantly, we can have some example. As Garrett said, we have the Rwanda Green Investment Facility, who is a model of green banks. We have also the Climate Finance Facility in South Africa, which is also another type of green banks. So you see that it can be a national green bank created from scratch, but it can also be an envelope of fundings, a green finance facility, hosted in commercial banks. I don't know if the technique has cleared my problem. Okay, because it will have been easier if you will have been able to see how a green bank looks like, especially the mix of support, technical support, financial instruments, grant, project preparation grant, and also the addition of lendings instruments like loans, concessional loans, guarantee, equity participation. So okay, good. I see the slide now. So next slide, yes. So you see on the right the model of green bank. Next slide, please. Next again. So the Africa Green Bank initiatives, so launched at COP27, the objective of this initiative is to create an ecosystem of green banks or local green finance facility across the continent. How we do that? We have identified many gaps, mostly 3, and we are covering those gaps by first providing the technical assistance which is needed to set up and design the appropriate envelope of green fundings, by also building the capacity of the staffing who will run this facility and build the appropriate governance. We also, through these initiatives, we support the creation through the capitalization of this envelope of fundings. And lastly, will come as providing the additionality which is needed on a specific transaction, bringing by those local green banks. So we'll be able to provide the de-risking instrument or the fundings which will be bringing additionality and scale up the fundings. With this African Green Bank initiatives, we know that there is an urgency that we start implementing this solution. So pending the creation of a dedicated funded vehicle within IFDB, we are launching in 2023 the pilot phase of this African Green Bank initiatives by providing the first technical assistance support to a certain number of commercial banks. So how it will be articulated? So the technical assistance will help in those commercial banks and government in setting up financially and also legally this envelope of fundings by the definition of a pipeline of sustainable project, well structured and bankable, by also building the institutional capacity in terms of investment, sustainable investment, how to monitor and report on those projects, but also how to evaluate the risk embedded in those projects. We will also support the conceptualization of a roadmap to capitalize this envelope of fundings, because those green banks have the capacity to mobilize resources on the domestic market, but as well externally. That's why it's really powerful, and it's allowed to scale up the climate finance available for NDC's implementation. So I just mentioned that we are also working on the creation of a facility, funds, which will be hosted, please next slide, which will be hosted in the IFDB. So the funds, this vehicle will be, which is called the Africa Green Finance Facility Funds, will work as a blended instrument because we will provide this technical assistance. We will also, through grant or reimbursable grant of territorial support, we'll also support the capitalization of those green banks by providing equity and quasi-equity, and we will also support by co-financing the transaction will come from this ecosystem of green banks by providing the de-risking instrument or any instrument which will be needed and provide the additionality which will allow this transaction to happen on the ground. So last slide, please. So why this green bank is really important? We find that this is a solution Africa was looking for more climate finance. This is the solution to bring private sector to step in climate action. This is also the solution to turn this 2.8 trillion of investment needs for NDC implementation into opportunities. It's allowed to translate into well-structured and bankable pipeline of local projects. It's also the solution to bring climate finance locally at the community level. It's the solution to finance adaptation, mitigation, biodiversity, landscape protection, and also just transition. It is the solution to empower the Africa through its financial sector and allow to take over destiny into its own hands, and it has to happen now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Audrey, for that presentation, and congratulations for managing to keep going despite the technical issues. I know from my own experience how I'm sure you've all experienced it when your slides don't work and you're let down. But nonetheless, we'll make the slides available so that you can see those in due course, and indeed the whole event will be available on YouTube in due course. But we'll keep the slides available so that you can follow up on them. So now, ladies and gentlemen, we'll move to the second section of our event today, We're going to have a panel discussion starting with the financial institutions. So now I have to say I don't know my panelists. Do we have Brice Houghton here? Is Audrey, is Brice joining online or is he in person? He's online. Okay, so Brice is online. I hope we'll be able to have the online panelists. Dalia Abdelkadir, I think must be joining online as well. Then we have Professor Njuguna Ndungu, also joining online. Not here, okay. Boris Soni. So we have Boris here in person and Abdulaziz. Great to see you. So we have two panelists here in the room with us and two panelists joining us online. I'm still waiting for confirmation that our online panelists are there. But since we have two with us here in the room, let us start with Boris Soni, Head of Corporate Social Responsibility at Coris Bank International. So what we'd like to hear, Soni, Brice, from you and from all our panelists, first of all, we invite you to make a short introduction on your institution and then talk a little bit about the main challenges for sustainable investments and what kind of support you are looking for, especially from the African Green Bank Initiative. So, Boris, over to you.
Okay, thank you. Coris Bank International is a commercial bank of Burkina Faso. It's a young bank. Next year, you will celebrate the 15th birthday. But in the less than 10 years, Coris Bank International became the first bank in Burkina Faso and is listed on the regional stock exchange called BRVM. And in our strategy, we have an act dedicated to the finance, sustainable finance. And our accreditation to GCF is processing. The main challenge for sustainable finance for us is the involvement of the private sector. And to manage this challenge, we think you have to build the capacity of commercial banks to allow them to understand and to control risk related to climate finance. Also, train private sector actors. Also, we have to make some regulation and incentives in favor to sustainable finance. For us, for Coris Bank International, we expect for this fund to show us, to give us the way to build an entity or a structure who allow us to finance a green economy. This is our expertise. And we need to strengthen our environmental and climate governance. We need also to build our capacity to mobilize financing to manage green financing. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much indeed. So I picked up some I think some very important points there. First of all, that you're working on your GCF accreditation. Of course, GCF is expected to be a major source of concessional finance. and a way perhaps of accessing some of the most concessional finance into green banking institutions. And then I also think, and I think Audrey will be very excited to hear that you're also seeking support to build your governance structures, to train staff, to build capacity within the institution, so that you can then generate and create credible pipelines of projects that you'll be able to utilize for finance. Great, and I'm delighted to welcome our third panelist to the platform now. So let us move to our second panelist, Abdou Aziz, who is the head of studies and strategies at La Banque Agricole Senegal. So once again, Abdou Aziz, we'd like to hear a quick introduction to the organization. What are the main challenges for sustainable instruments, and what kind of support are you looking for? Over to you.
Thank you very much, Gareth. I want first of all to thank African Development Bank by being La Banque Agricole to this launching of the Green Financing Initiative. La Banque Agricole Senegal is the main commercial agriculture bank in Senegal, which the main mission is to finance agriculture value chain in Senegal. Since 2020, we have moved to GCF accreditation and have been the second direct access entity of Senegal, which now we are working, what we are working is to better understand what is the relation between climate finance and our main topic is in agriculture. So what is our ambition to really address climate issue in adaptation or mitigation is to work closely with the private sector to better allow them more financing to finance really some climate projects in Senegal. And for this, the strategy is to work by developing more partnership. The strategy is also to work by developing some credit line for the bank to more allow finance in adaptation issues and mitigation issues. So what is also our ambition is, if we want to really address climate finance on agriculture, forestry issues, land use, management, we understand that public fund only cannot really allow Senegal to attain those objectives. So we really work with the private sector to better allow them possibility and opportunity to really understand what is the, the challenge relates to climate finance. We start working with IFAT, and we are part of the iGreenFin project, which is where La Banque Agricole is one of the 5 banks who work closely with IFAT to develop the iGreenFin project to better allow fund for small farmers and to better allow also the agriculture sector to be very resilient of climate change. We also have on the table a PPF with GCF for climate smart agriculture, because what we really want is we are developing many pilots on renewable energy, addressing also some financing on solar irrigation. Our ambition is to go scaling up for this pilot and really give to Senegalese, our state, many finance to really address the objective or the NDCs. So I think these opportunities with African Development Bank is very good for us, because this technical assistance will maybe the very profit to La Banque Agricole staffing, La Banque Agricole commercial model to better understand what we can really address in climate issues. So we're very happy to be part of this initiative. And yeah, we'll give our best also to better understand so what is the next step. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much indeed for that. And I think we also heard that you're working with the Green Climate Fund and that you're already working with the objectives of helping to finance projects to implement the NDCs. And of course, that's the ultimate goal of the green investments and the Paris alignment work, is to ensure that we can provide the resources to support the implementation of projects that deliver on the nationally determined contributions. And I think what we see, is that the level of finance required for all of these projects is very substantial, but there are many, many small projects. And it's challenging to mobilize resources. Certainly, at the African Development Bank, we are not able to mobilize resources for so many small-scale projects, and that's why we need these green banks, these national banks to get involved, using instruments like lines of credit in the first place, but then helping to build capacity so that the banks can actually take on the roles of developing those initiatives themselves. Great, so let's move to our third in-person speaker. We have Dalia Abdelkader, who is the Chief Sustainability Officer from CIB Egypt. Dalia, you're very welcome. Over to you.
Yes, and I apologize for being late because I had a panel at Green Zone, so excuse me for that. However, yes, I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer of Commercial International Bank, Egypt's largest private sector bank. Actually, we had the advantage of realizing the business case of sustainable finance as early as 2015. And ultimately, we have been into the process that led us in 2020 to issue Egypt's first successful green bond. Now we have a very structured approach to enact sustainable finance within the system. We have institutional pillars that start with governance, very robust governance, top-down, bottom-up approach, sustainable finance policy. We are founders of 2 global frameworks, Principles for Responsible Banking and the Net Zero Banking Alliance, and we subscribe to another 9 international frameworks like the TCFD, the PRI, and the list goes on. Third, we have a system transformation process for all functions in the bank, and we have a strategy that targets environmental, social, and climate risk, revenue generation, and ecological footprint. We're the first bank, to my knowledge, worldwide to issue ecological footprint. It's an upgrade of the carbon footprint. And we have communication and innovation pillars. This being said, I want to say that although we have a very structured approach to integrate sustainability, we still need African Development Bank. Why? To scale the capacity building across all employees. We are working on that, but we need to deepen the knowledge transfer inside the bank and to help us structure sustainability link clause. We cooperated with the IFC and we have the green bond. It was very successful despite the pandemic. However, my message to you here is not to talk about the needs of Commercial International Bank. We can take it offline because we're almost there. I would qualify CIB as a mature bank by even global standards. What I want to talk about is the need of African banks to move forward. COP27 is about Africa, and it's about implementation. And if we talk about Africa, and parallel to all political negotiations, with all my respect, we aspire that they address climate change and get to mobilize the $100 billion that have been pledged for years. Parallel to that, there is another very powerful track that we need to leverage on in Africa. That's the power of finance, the power of financial institutions. I think Africa has 54 countries, around 470 financial institutions. Don't quote me for that, more or less. What we need to meet the climate change challenges and turn them into opportunities, because Africa, I mean, we have energy issues, but we have the best renewable energy resources. We have poverty, but we have 60% population. So Africa has all the resources to be in a better place other than negotiating $100 billion that are a drop in the ocean. With all my respect to climate cannot be politicized, and we are starting on a defected premise. It's political interest. We're talking political interest. It's about a global humanitarian issue where Africa is, I don't want to say the victim. It's not the cause of the crisis, but definitely Africa will be the solution for the crisis. It's not our making as crisis, but the solution should be our making. And here I want to spot on the role of financial institutions in Africa and the African Development Bank. You have the power, the track record, the expertise to get out with an induction program for all institutions in Africa, for all commercial banks in Africa, whereby you go step by step. It's an induction program of 1 year, to get them to develop their own environmental social risk management. I mean, first thing, from my experience, there are baby steps. You start by the policy and the frameworks, establish governance structures inside the bank, develop a sustainable finance policy, and then front and center, environmental and social risk management system. That's the backbone. I mean, you cannot think of green bonds, of sustainability-linked loans, of anything unless you have an ESRM according to the IFC performance standards. And it's not impossible. It's doable. It doesn't need resources. Once we have the ESRM, the risk, we are in a position to issue climate and innovating climate finance instruments, and then we start reporting. So it's a very systematic process, which I urge, as we are in COP27 talking about Africa, I aspire that the African Development Bank will take the lead to coordinate with all regulators. We have the Sustainability Banking Network, Banking and Finance Network. It's concerned with regulators. And by the way, African regulators are very much there. The regulatory landscape for sustainable finance is not bad. South Africa is leading ahead. Morocco, Egypt. I mean, a week ago, the Central Bank of Egypt mandated all commercial banks in Egypt to implement sustainable finance in a very progressive manner, to report on climate risk, to report to establish sustainable finance departments, reporting to the CEO. I would say Kenya is there. So, I mean, the periphery, there are some bright spots in Africa, contouring Africa, and this needs to be scaled and mainstreamed, and this is where I urge and request that this is very doable, and if we are there, you will unleash the power of finance in Africa to turn the challenges into real opportunities, because there are real low-hanging fruits in the continent. Thank you.
Dalia, thank you very much indeed. That's extremely interesting. First of all, congratulations on the progress that you've made at CIB and being one of the leading banks in Africa in this respect. That's really heartening to hear, and it's great to hear that we have some of these countries already on the continent where the central bank is taking these issues forward. And indeed, it's great to describe those. I really like your analogy of some bright lights on the continent. And what's also really good from our point of view is they're quite regionally spread out, which is great, because we always have a problem about regional distribution. So if we have somebody in South Africa, or we have South African, Kenyan, and Egyptian, we're already covering 3 of our 5 regions, and I'm sure we can find good examples. Now, this also links very well to the reference that I think it was Audrey made in hers about AFAC, the African Financial Alliance on Climate Change, which is an initiative that we're hosting at the bank and implementing in partnership with the Global Adaptation Centre to help build the regulatory environment and improve the supervision amongst African banks. And now here I have to be careful, because I get onto thin ice, because I'm not a banker, so I don't know very much about regulating banks, but I know that it's important, and I know that AFAC is pushing us in that direction. And of course, we have a lot of very good experience coming from TCFD in Europe and North America as well. So a lot of materials to draw on there as we take things forward. Now, I think our other 2 panelists for this part haven't joined us online. So, hang on. Excuse me 1 second. Take questions now for these 3. Yeah. I'm going to, because when I let these panelists go, they'll go back into the audience, and then I have trouble when I want to ask them a question. So I'm going to open up for just briefly, for if anybody has any burning questions for our three panelists here who have come from the financial institutions, before we have our second panel coming up to talk, and that will be our partners. Now, it's always very risky to open up the floor to questions halfway through because it may take too much time, but so I'll be quite strict. So I've got a gentleman at the back and another, and so I'll take three questions. Audrey. The gentleman in the red stripy shirt over here, Audrey, first, at the back. And then we'll come to the gentleman there in the brown shirt, and then the gentleman in the middle in the stripy shirt. Okay. So we'll take the three questions, please, and then we'll direct them. And please, questions, not statements.
Thank you. Thank you, moderator. Yes, I'll go straight to the point. My name is Mithika from Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance. I've just come when someone was talking about Green Climate Fund. And so question number one is, do you think since 2010, after its establishment, the Green Climate Fund is delivering on its mandate? Is it not more rigid than what we envisioned? A bank which is accessible, easily accessible, and which is democratic, and which we believe is not. Wait, that's number one. On the question on the lady on finance, I just want to understand really how is it really evolving in the African countries in terms of climate finance, and whether we have sufficient data really to inform us on the $100 billion US and the share for African countries. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Now we'll have the gentleman in the brown shirt over here. I'm sorry, I'm going to keep it at three questions, but you can come back in the second panel.
All right, thanks for the very wonderful presentation. Mine is just a very simple, direct one. In terms of the funding, the pricing for the green bonds, how does that play against conventional loans? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the gentleman in the stripy shirt here in the middle.
Thank you very much. My name is Joel Zungrana. I'm the Director General for the National Agency of Meteorology in Burkina Faso. And I want to thank, firstly, the representative of Coris Bank for the partnership they have with our institution to make climate information available at the national television. And the question I have is about training, financing a long-term training for our technicians. We have problems with the Green Climate Fund. They don't need to finance training for engineers, a long-term training. What is the solution for this issue? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, so I've got noted down four questions. First of all, a general question about the Green Climate Fund. Are they delivering? Secondly, one specifically to Dalia on the evolution of data, and do we have enough information on the $100 billion? Thirdly, pricing against of commercial or conventional loans against the green bonds, and finally, from the gentleman from Burkina Faso on the long-term training of technicians. So, would anybody like to take on any of those questions? And Audrey, you could also join us here because you might like to talk on the last question. Dalia, there were some specifically to you, I think.
Yes, I will start with the questions that I can handle. I think I will comment on the success of climate finance instruments in Africa, and then zoom on the green bond and talk about data at the $100 billion. Yes, so climate finance instruments, interestingly, were very successful in Africa, despite the pandemic. All the climate finance instruments like green bonds, sustainability-linked loans, they were all very successful. Talking about our experience with the green bond, which again was issued at the peak of the pandemic, and That was the time when I joined CIB, and I was very much surprised. Why would a bank attempt and innovate a new instrument at times of crisis when all corporates and banks were wrestling to maintain their profit, let alone their existence? And what strikes me is that at times of crisis, you never stop innovating, because crisis is a system signaling that you cannot go any longer with the same business model. So if you change the business model, you win. And that was the case. The green bond was for $100 billion. It was issued in cooperation with the International Finance Corporation. It included mitigation projects and adaptation projects like energy efficiency, renewable energy, water desalination. Interestingly, confidently, I will tell you, it was for commercial rates. It was not subsidized. It was profitable for the bank and profitable for our clients, because along with the loan, it was not just a loan given for no, it was accompanied by walk-through audits, whereby we visit our clients and identify areas of risk and opportunities and monetize the environmental and social benefits, which neutralize the risk. So, for example, we will identify for our client there is energy efficiency. In all our lendings, there was something like 40% reduction in energy consumption, which monetizes to the bottom line of our client. So let's be very clear. With climate finance instruments, it's the new way to grow. So this is number one, and I covered the green bond. The green bond, these are normal lending, but it's associated, it should be governed by green bond principles that make sure there are eligibility criteria. We will not lend to any corporate or any project unless there are environmental savings, and it is calculated. And the knowledge transfer took place by the IFC. So this is what's green. I mean, the green bonds, green loans, they are associated with certain eligibility criteria that are followed up on, and we have to report it. So in most cases, there were economic benefits, environmental, and in some cases, social benefits. We aspire to issue the blue bond, hopefully with the assistance of African Development Bank and sustainability-linked loans. Now we have 6 products. Our corporate line of business has 6 packaged and branded products that are rocking the market in Egypt, because we are educating our clients. We established a program called Sustaining Sector, whereby we bond with our clients in different sectors and identify what's the business case of sustainability for textiles, for pharma, for oil and gas, and how can they do the transition. I represent Africa on the Net Zero Banking Alliance, and so far, not a single bank in Africa joined, and I wouldn't dare ask them to join. Only 2 banks from Africa are there, Kenya Commercial Bank and Commercial International Bank. And I see it as an advanced step. I mean, you do not start with the net zero. That's why, again, I'm urging the introduction of an induction program for African banks. The $100 billion are not, we all know, the negotiations going over there is to get them to deliver $100 billion. To my knowledge, 60% are delivered. However, they are a drop in the ocean. And it's a waste of our precious time. I mean, the time of negotiators is worth more than $100 billion. And let me tell you something. Again, the power of finance in Africa is there, and Africa has the resources, not only the energy resources or youth, the financial resources. For one thing, the sovereign funds in Africa, they possess trillions of dollars. For one thing, MENA is a net exporter of capital. So we also have the capital. We need the determination, a very focused capacity building program, and we need to assume responsibility to own our own destiny. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much indeed. That's a very rich answer to quite a few of the questions I think that were posed. Let me invite the other 2 panelists that would like to come in on either of the other questions.
Yes, I think on the way of their climate ambition, commercial banks are faced to 2 challenges. The first is to better understand what is environmental and social management risk, because they are not familiarized to manage climate risks on their portfolio. The second thing is really to build a very strong how to say, green project portfolio. And for this, we need really assistance. For La Banque Agricole, since our accreditation in GCF to now, we have benefit to more training by GCF because, as you know, Green Climate Fund offer many facilities by the readiness in the PPF also. With the readiness, we really have been trained in how to build in the implementation of our environmental and social management system. We also have been trained in developing projects. We have also benefit with African Development Bank on the training on developing green projects. I think with developing many partnerships with the international banks, the public development bank, commercial bank can have more, can benefit to more training in addressing many issues in climate finance. I have no specific question because more of the question is addressing to Madam. So,
thank you very much. Sonny, would you like to come in? Okay, very good. So now, one of our other panelists from the financial institution, Brice Houghton, Managing Director of CDCB in Benin. I think we've solved the technical problems, and I understand he is now connected. Brice, can you hear me? And would you like to take the floor? We're not seeing anything other than the cover slide. Any indication from our IT team? Okay, I think it looks like we've lost Brice again. Is Brice available? No, we don't know. Okay, so let us move to the second panel then, and if Brice joins us, we'll bring him back in. So, colleagues, thank you very much indeed. Round of applause, please. And I'd like to invite our partner panel to join us here now. Again, I'm not sure who we have with us and who's online. We have Paul Matthew, who's from the Climate Investment Funds. I've seen him online. Timothy Jaulin, Head of ESG Development and Advocacy at Amundi. Craig Wies, Chief Executive Officer from the New Zealand Green Investment Finance. Doug Sims, Senior Director of the Green Bank Network, and Kosivi Domengni, expert in energy efficiency and renewable energy from the Canadian Climate Action. Great, so I think we have a full panel with Paul online. Tremendous. So let me just see if Paul can hear us and if he is able to speak. Because if he's there, we should take him first. Paul, are you online and can you hear us? This is really like presenting in the dark because I have no idea who is online and who's not. So please spare me your sympathy. I see nothing from the online participants. So let us move then to Timothy Jaulin, who is the Head of ESG Development and Advocacy at Amundi. And what we're asking for here is, again, is an introduction to your institution and some of the actions that you've undertaken in the field of climate finance, how and why you're interested in the Green Bank Initiative, and the kind of support that you may be able to provide to the African Green Bank Initiative. Please, over to you. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Thanks, Garrett. So, quick word of introduction on Amundi. We are what we would call the very large investor. We are a European asset manager with about 2 trillion of assets, and we invest significant amounts of money, notably in emerging markets, in private assets, but mostly in capital markets, in debt and equity. We have a significant commitment to green finance and sustainability at large. And the few words or the few remarks I'd like to do today are about the following questions. Why should we care about sustainable capital market development? That's one, and I think it's very key to understand that, and that's one of the reasons we're here today. Second, why we should care more about sustainable capital market development in emerging markets. And that's really key as well. Third, sharing with you why I'm here, specifically to support this initiative and why we think this initiative can be a game changer in the Africa region. First, very quickly, why sustainable capital market development matters. Very simply because when you look at the magnitude of the financing and funding needs linked to climate goals and sustainable development goals at large, there's no way it's going to come only from private equity and private capital, so direct investment into real assets. What we will need are a mobilization from each and every financial and real economy agents that will act as intermediaries, meaning local banks, sometimes public agencies, regional banks, and so on and so forth. So it will be a sum of individual small actions from a variety of actors. And in that respect, if you want to mobilize all these actors that are going to need some funding, capital markets can play a very positive role. That's the reason why we've been so supportive about green bond development since the very beginning. But when we were discussing green bonds ahead of the Paris Agreement, so that was a while ago, there was one issue. Green bonds, as you know, have been created and supported by multilateral development banks in the first place. So if you think about the theory of change behind a green bond, it's good to have the World Bank issuing a green bond. It will not make a big difference. Why? Because the World Bank is already mobilized on climate. What you want to see is green bonds being issued by other institutions where the green bond issuance program will be part of this transformative journey that each and every financial institution should undertake. So if you want to have green bonds connected with additionality, you need to grow the market and to convince other issuers than the MDB. So that's what we've been doing. And as you can imagine, the one place in the world where you have the most additionality is very likely to be emerging markets. Now, why I'm here today specifically is to share with you, and in a couple of minutes, the experience that we had in designing a program focused on emerging markets. Back in 2017, we've been working with the IFC, the International Finance Corporation, to launch a dedicated program to support emerging market green bonds issuance. At the time, the thinking was to successfully start this asset class, we would need two things at the same time. Number one is a fund of significant size to really signal the market that you can mobilize capital to support potential issuances, but you will also need to have a significantly funded technical assistance facility to make sure we would have a pipeline to invest in. And if you want to develop an asset class, those are the two things you need at the same time, because otherwise you issue things, but they're not going to find investors, or you have money to deploy, but you don't find assets or projects to invest in. So we worked with the IFC to work on these two elements. On the funding or investment side, we launched the largest green bond fund ever launched, solely dedicated to emerging markets. And they are running on the side this technical assistance program. A few achievements since we launched the fund back in 2018. So it's been 4 years and a half or so. On the investment side, we have reached 1.4 billion of assets. We have already invested 1 billion into green bonds coming from emerging markets. A small part of it is coming from Africa, and we expect more of it coming from Africa thanks to this initiative. So that's one. Second, we have invested 600 million into private placement coming from financial institutions, which is a way to really support them in their first time green bond issuance, and that can make a difference. In terms of technical assistance program, we've trained 300 emerging market bankers from 100 institutions, and the goal is really to make sure that we have climate champions that will apply these principles in all the target markets. And given the size of the private placement we've invested in, it works. Additionality comes very much from the technical assistance you can provide so that people apply your principles on the ground. So why I am here today is because it's been working very well. We've invested over the past 4 years in about a quarter of each and every green bonds coming from emerging markets outside China. But there is still a long way to go before reaching the scale that we need, notably in Africa. So we very much welcome the initiative. We will be present when we can as a co-investor, because that's our mandate. We have significant AUM to deploy, and we will try to do what we can as well in terms of technical assistance program, because really the additionality is there. This is really, really critical. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. That's a really encouraging story to hear, that there's been so much movement and success in this area and so many lessons to learn. And for me, that's really helpful to understand, the transition of how we get to, a situation where all of these institutions are mobilizing resources to invest into the green bonds, to then really bring scale. And it's a very nice way of presenting it. So that's been very instructive. Let's move now to our second speaker, Craig Weiss, I'm not sure, from Chief Executive Officer from the New Zealand Green Investment Finance. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Weiss rhymes with peace, or Weiser if you're German inclined. Okay. But kia ora, as we say in New Zealand. It's great to be here and to share a little bit about NZGIF, as we call it, as well as the power of the green bank model. So we're a green bank in New Zealand. We've been around about 3.5 years. And our story really is, I think, typical for many in the network, which is one of being able to invest in change to accelerate it and decarbonize our domestic economy. And so I think what we have to offer is our insights from our own experience, as well as, I think, valuable perspective on how to do this in economies that don't look like other economies, because New Zealand, is a relatively small nation, very far from the rest of the world, and with only 5 million people ourselves, our financial markets are sophisticated but not perfectly formed. And so part of our role in the market there is providing a bridge between finding climate assets and low carbon investment opportunities and putting those in a form in which they're investable for institutional investors, both domestically and abroad. And I think that's a very, very powerful part of the story for green banking, no matter what your in-market local economy looks like. And so a couple of things about the model that I think are really important to note. One is, obviously climate finance is about doing things differently. The attraction or the challenge is to do that and develop the model without being pulled too much in the direction of, say, what's occurred to date. And I think that's part of the green bank story. It's a different kind of institution. Being nimble is very important. Being as independent as possible is very important as well. Getting those governance structures that allow the institutions to draw on commercial expertise in market to then deploy capital is really important. Why is that? Well, investors look at risk and they look at lots of different risks. And I think the challenge that we have is that climate risk isn't an asset class, right? So there's nothing in the system that is yet oriented towards discreetly and independently dealing with it. And so how you navigate institutions with their own investments, Amundi, for example, can vary dramatically, right? In one institution, you're talking to their private capital team. In another one, it could be their infrastructure finance team. In another institution, you don't even know who you're talking to. So getting to the right people and presenting the opportunities in the right way requires a great deal of expertise in terms of how to structure transactions. And this is particularly important, we think, when you get away from the big project finance deals and you start to think about how and where climate finance opportunities and climate assets are in the economy. So New Zealand is a nation of small businesses, and so how you get to those is a little bit different than, say, building a large-scale, plant somewhere that's, grid-scale solar. And these things require different approaches, and that's where I think, the kind of experiences that we have are very, very relevant in terms of structuring the deals to get private capital. So success begets success as well, and so getting going is one thing. We were capitalized in a very small manner initially, just $100 million. We had some wins early, so we got another $300 million from our government, but we've been able to start to deploy that and raise co-investment fairly quickly, so we've done about 150 in co-investment, and we're about to finish a $250 million offer in the market, so that's actually getting true private capital in from the markets to do what we're doing. So, you know, once you get going, you build capability and confidence in the institution, things start to roll, right? That's 3.5 years in for us. We don't share all of the same issues that everyone in the room will. Local markets really, really matter, and I think it's important to be able to speak to the risks that are in your market and how you mitigate those in a very, very discreet way. A lot of finance really is coming in, I think, top down, if you will. That's the approach. You know, it's kind of looking at things almost like it's corporate credit. The reality is, once you hit the analysis inside an institution, it's bottom up, right? So the more you can speak to specific risks that do or don't present, it's not that they may exist or not, it's how you deal with them. The better off your proposition, the stronger it will be, and the more likely I think you're able to succeed. But we're very big proponents of the green banking model. We think it has great relevance across different kinds of economies in different ways. And I'm happy to talk to anyone afterwards about more about our experience or answer any other questions as we go forward.
Great, thank you very much indeed, Craig. That's really interesting. And again, it's great to see that, sort of hear that story about the transition of how you started as a relatively small capitalization and have grown over time and building experience. And that, I think, is really encouraging. It gives us hope that that we can do the same thing with African institutions. And also, I noted very much that you are New Zealand is a country of small businesses, and that's what we have in almost all African economies. 90% of East African economies is made up of micro, small, and medium enterprises. So it's how you lend and how you make money available at scale to those kinds of institutions, which is critical. So that's great. Thank you very much. Let's pass on to Doug Sims. Doug is the Senior Director at the Green Bank Network. Doug, over to you.
Gareth. And thanks to the AFDB for putting this together and on the great success on this emerging facility. So the Green Bank Network is a learning network, a peer learning network of green banks. It was founded in 2015 at the Paris Agreement Conference in Paris. And it really was around a bunch of new institutions coming together to sort of share knowledge and also help other countries, other jurisdictions understand this green bank model. So in 2015, it was the UK, the National Green Bank. It was also Japan, Malaysia, Australia. And we also had, in the US, some subnational green banks from New York State and Connecticut. And so they came together around this certain model of looking at the green transition, which was looking, how do we have a mandate, a specific mandate to understand this market? If you're a commercial bank, you have a broad range of lending activities. If you're a development bank, you have a broad range of developmental activities. What about focusing on green? The key thing was this mandate, to allow focus and staffing around that mandate. Another part of the mandate is, how do we mobilize private capital? We've all heard everyone say there's not enough capital, particularly in Africa, to having savings, local savings, to drive this transition. How do we mobilize both local capital markets and also external, international, regional capital markets? How do we do this? These specialized investors get specialized knowledge of these particular markets that are local to their particular environment, and they deploy a number of tools. Co-investment is a really important tool. So for example, in the UK, one of the first successes they achieved was in the offshore wind market, which didn't exist at all prior to a decade ago. And it wasn't investable by banks. It was mainly being invested in by utilities who brought equity to England, to the UK to do offshore wind. The first debt deals were done by the UK Green Investment Bank with the utilities, and eventually they brought in other banks, they brought in sovereign wealth funds, and now you have this very vibrant, robust market in the UK for that asset class. They did a similar thing with bioenergy in the UK, because in the UK, what do they have? They have a lot of ocean around them, and they have a very green environment with bioenergy potential. So the other important part is looking at how do you develop secondary markets for green energy. How do you actually make these assets tradable? In the case of small projects, how can you aggregate small projects so they can actually be put in a portfolio and become investable by other investors? Sometimes it takes a little bit of help for the commercial sector to get involved. So green banks are flexible in how they deploy their capital. They're not just taking senior positions, they're taking subordinated positions in the capital stack. They can do equity, some of them. They have other kinds of risk mitigation mechanisms, like loan loss reserve for banks to absorb some of the losses on loans. So these innovative products are necessary to really bring along the sector into the green finance opportunity. So the Green Bank Network is really excited about this initiative. And right now, the Green Bank Network has expanded from its initial membership to include institutions from New Zealand, from Brazil, additional US institutions, and India. But we have not had an African member yet, so we really want to get some African institutions involved. So we're really excited to partner with the AFDB on this initiative to bring in facilities or institutions that share this same sort of portfolio and message. So right now it's a pretty small group of green banks. It's a handful of institutions internationally. In the US, the success has been demonstrated such that the US, is very decentralized, so we have no national green bank. But just recently in the legislation passed over the summer, there is capital to create a national US green bank. We're very excited about that institution. But the banks in our network, which are again about 10 banks, over the past seven years have mobilized $136 billion in their respective markets collectively. And the leverage ratio, mobilization ratio changes, but this year is lifetime it's about 1.7. For every green bank dollar, 1.7 commercial dollars have been raised. And we heard earlier that 80% of climate finance in Africa is public. Even if it was one-to-one, it'd be a lot better. So the model is very powerful for Africa to explore. Just a couple small points. I think the formula is this combination of technical assistance funding and capital. It's not mysterious, but we have to get it in the right sort of formats. So what we see as the opportunity to work with this project is to allow the Green Bank Network members to share knowledge with the Africa Green Bank Initiative to help both on areas of governance, launching a green bank, getting the stars aligned with local champions to develop green banks, get a capital raising strategy, understand some product strategies, and really join this cohort, because technical assistance, classically speaking, is you get a consultant, you get to help you, but peer learning is also very important. Peer institutions are really important transmitters of knowledge, and we all work better if we're working together collectively. So really excited to hear about the launch of the project and look forward to discussing more at the Q&A.
Great, Doug. Thank you very much indeed. Indeed, I think peer learning, as you say, is critically important. Just to pick up on that last point, and I'm hugely encouraged by the depth of experience that we're hearing about in other institutions who are going to be able to help. And Audrey, let's see if we can find the first African bank to join the Green Bank Network, and we can have a celebration with you, Doug, when when we succeed. So let's move to our last speaker, Kosivi, who's going to present a couple of slides, which I hope are operational. I have the clicker. Let me pass that over to you. Over to you, Kosivi.
Thanks, Garrett. Hi, everyone. It's not working. Okay.
It's okay.
So I'll be presenting rapidly our initiative. So by answering some questions, the first one is who we are, and the second one is what we do. The third one, why are we interested in the AG3F, and the last one is the way forward. Who we are the Climate Action in Africa. So the Climate Action in Africa is an initiative of the government of Canada, implemented by 3 Canadian companies, including Alinea International, Econolaire, and WSP. We are an expert deployment mechanism. We don't offer grants, but we offer technical assistance. So we are a 5-year initiative, beginning from the last year, 2021, and we will last till 2026. And we are part of the commitment of the government of Canada to provide $5.3 billion to international climate finance. So if you want to have more information about us, you are encouraged to visit our website, www.climateactionafrica.ca, www.climateactionafrica.ca. What do we do? We offer, firstly, short-term technical assistance. So the technical assistance we offer is up to 1 year. And this technical assistance is demand-driven, based on local solutions. So the technical assistance we are offering can be up to a maximum of 300,000 Canadian dollars. That is equivalent to something about 225,000 USD. And the eligible organizations that can tap into our support include some sub-Saharan African countries, institutions within countries, including public institutions, NGOs, academia, and private sector. Please note that for the 3 countries like South Sudan, Sudan, and Zimbabwe, it is only NGOs that can have our support. So what do we do? Basically, we have like 2 instruments that we deploy. The first one is the request for support. And for the request of support, we have like 3 pillars within this request of support pillar. So we have the first one is building climate change governance and capacity. So we are here to support all about climate change governance within public or private sector or NGOs. In addition, we are supporting climate change mitigation projects, focusing on energy and forestry, and adaptation projects focusing on water and agriculture. And lastly, within the request for support pillar, we support women participation and leadership in climate actions. So the second instrument that we use, the salt exchange instrument, is like a pillar that can be spread over the 3 other sub-pillars, and it helps to build knowledge and management. We know that in Africa we do a lot, but we don't have this instrument to build knowledge and to disseminate knowledge. So this pillar is about all knowledge production and knowledge dissemination within African countries. And for example, for this COP that we are attending, we have financed some people that came to attend the COP and to build their capacity. And currently they are in a session where many persons are there to build their capacity around all the COP structure and climate initiative. So why are we interested in the AG3F initiative? The reason is that our goals are aligned. And at first point, we know that AG3F capacitates local financial institutions to develop local green pipeline of projects. And it is something that we also are supporting. At the second point, we know that AG3F eases access to resources to local financial institutions that need to support, that may need to support a sustainable and decarbonized development in Africa. That which we support also. And lastly, we know that AG3F increases the capacity of African countries to access and mobilize climate finance to support the implementation of their NDCs and related national climate and development goals. So what will be the way forward? The way forward is that we encourage all the financial institutions here to collaborate with the African Development Bank on the AG3F initiative. We, as Climate Action in Africa, our support will come through the AFDB. And if you are here, you are not a financial institution, you can just visit our website and go to the website and support your demand. And we will be here to take it from there and support you for your climate action. Thank you very much. So you have also the website there, climateactionafrica.ca, and my contact details are there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kovisi, and that's great to have a really good, clear explanation of how the expert deployment mechanism works. Needless to say, Audrey has an application in for funding. We hope that will be successful, but it's great, and we also want to acknowledge the contribution of the Government of Canada providing these resources. It's not the only fund that we benefit from at the African Development Bank. So finally, we have Paul Matthew online. The IT is working. Hello, Paul. We can see you. I don't know if you can see us. We're coming to the end of our time slot, so without further ado, I'm going to hand over to you and invite you to tell us a little bit more about SIF and your interest in our Green Banks initiative. Over to you. You're still muted, I think. We're not hearing you yet. Paul, you're still muted. Hold on while we see if the IT can sort this out. Can you hear us, Paul? I don't think so. It's a shame. Paul, we're not hearing you, I'm afraid. And I know you were halfway through your presentation, and you're going to have to start again. Can you switch off your second Zoom? I think you're connected twice.
Gareth.
Okay. Try that. We're not hearing you yet. Keep trying, Paul. I feel bad because I guess you've got up early if you're in the US.
Gareth, do you want us to talk about something while you're trying to figure that out?
So, well, maybe while we just see if Paul can get his connection in place. We mentioned earlier that the climate investment funds had provided us with the financial support that we used for the study that kicked off our work in this area. I talked about it in my introduction, and also the Vice President referenced it, our scoping report on the opportunities and challenges for green banks in Africa. And we continue to find that the climate investment funds are very supportive, because the instruments that we create will speak directly to the investment plans that we prepare under the climate investment funds. And here we get a little bit into the detail, but the climate investment funds, they have a number of programs. Historically, the pilot program for climate resilience, the forest investment program, and the sustainable renewable energy programs. And each of these programs generated project pipelines, which the CIF funded, and we were also able to fund them from some of the MDB resources. But there were also project pipelines and activities that remained unfunded, and green banks would be an obvious candidate to pick up these kinds of opportunities to finance them, and to put the first money in there and then be able to leverage that up and mobilize additional finance. So it looks like we've lost the connection with Paul. And I think in view of time, I've got about 5 minutes left now. I would like to open up the floor for just another 3 very specific questions, if anybody would like to ask a question. Audrey, if you would take a roving mic. Please show me your hands. So I've got Edith, the gentleman behind, and this gentleman here, and the lady here as well, because I think you had one.
All right,
very quick.
Very quick, yeah. But as I get into the quick one, just maybe to introduce myself. My name is Edward Kabwe. I'm coming from an institution called Zambezi River Authority. We are developing a 2,400 megawatt hydropower project between Zambia and Zimbabwe. So it's a super green project which qualifies for what we're talking about. We are being anchored by the African Development Bank as our lead arranger, and also supported by NEPAD AUDA. Just next to me here is my chief executive, Engineer Mnyaraj Mnodawafa. Sir, maybe you can stand so that they see you. He is the chief executive. So now, my question is, our project needs $5 billion, and we are looking for funding facilities like the ones we've talked about. Of course, $2 billion to build the dam, and the other part to build the power plants. So it's in the dam that we need the green financing. So my specific question or guidance is, from your experience, that quantum of financing, what would be your thoughts to assist us to accelerate acquisition of such financing from the thoughts or your experience? Because we are interested and we want to move very fast to acquire such financing.
Okay, so a very specific question. Can we raise $2 billion for hydropower? Let's come to that then. We'll have Edith, and then the gentleman behind Edith, and then this lady here. Jonathan, I'm sorry, I'm closing it after that.
Okay, thank you very much. That was a very interesting panel. My question very quickly is on the pipeline of projects that you're currently funding, both in New Zealand as well as the first speaker. What percentage is adaptation projects? Would be interesting to know. Thank you.
The gentleman behind. Audrey, the gentleman behind.
Hi, my name is Judith from Inforce. It's an NGO network. And my specific question is about the microfinancing.
Hello?
Hello? Yeah, my question is about the microfinancing. If your banks or the other banks, which was previously presented, are you working with microfinancing? And also about the women entrepreneurship, which was mentioned here. And then how do you cope with that end community energy? For example, if a village would like a solar cell off-grid, and people doesn't have money, then would you give loan to that? And how do you cope with the interest rate? Because in Europe, actually it is 2%. If you want to, the interest rate is around 2%, and here I hear that it's 16%. So when it's getting down to people, then how do you cope with this? Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. And the gentleman behind Edith had also asked.
Okay, I can see the live feed now.
Thanks, Chair. It seems Audrey doesn't see the gentleman behind. My name is Benson from Kenya, Institute for Law and Environmental Governance. My question is to the gentleman from Climate Action Climate Action Africa. Your model of support is very curious. First of all, a lot of money, 5.3 billion or thereabout, I don't know. It's quite some colossal sum of money. But it's not to be given out as grants. It is in technical assistance and the soft side of things. This is the model that we are very askance about and we are very concerned about. Money needs to flow to projects and initiatives that are locally led. This whole idea that sometimes we are wedded to about capacities in Africa and that kind of technical support, we are trying to run away from it. Please, could you justify that model and help us to understand that it doesn't basically align to the fears that we have had before and the trends that we've seen in paradigm of development, where it is all about capacity for Africa and research for Africa and all that kind of stuff, but money should not flow.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm going to close the floor to questions there. We have one on hydropower between Zambia and Zimbabwe, the pipeline of percentage of the adaptation projects in the pipelines from Amundi and in the New Zealand Green Bank. Are we working with microfinance? Can we give loans to local community energy projects, interest rates? And finally, Kovisi, I think you can clear up on the question on the level of finance, because that's the total Canadian program, not the funding for that. So who would like to? Craig, you have the microphone.
Lucky. So just a couple of comments quickly across, and then I'll hand off. Look, $5 billion, I think, was the overall project size, or $2 billion. It doesn't matter. A couple of things. One, it's hydro, which is great. Two, I think that size of project does give you and put you in the realm of investable for institutions who need really big ticket sizes, right? Which is very, very good thing. It does take a long time, right? As I'm sure you're experiencing. But I think, you know, for us, our focus is slightly different because we don't...
Hello, 1, 2, 3.
There's not a gap in our market for capital for large-scale project finance. So I can't speak to that in particular, but I think you have very good fundamentals would be my overall comment. On the adaptation side, our mandate is currently limited to mitigation, so that's our focus, and you get that in institutions. Adaptation is coming, and it's something that we're thinking about a lot. And of course, we always try to get multiple benefits with everything we invest in. On the cost of capital side for, which is an issue in any economy for a portion of the market, we're a commercial investor, right? So we're getting private capital to invest with us because we can provide commercial returns. But surprisingly, there's so much technology and so much investable, right, in the green economy that provides commercial returns. So we're there, right? But with respect to those parts of the economy where there's some other risk and it's hard to get in, we also work with others who are providing soft money. So it really is a blended capital solution then. So working with, say, a government or whatever the program, it could be philanthropic, it could be an impact investor, to kind of fill that gap between the commerciality and, if you will, the subsidy. And that's how we deal with that, and effectively.
Great, thanks. Come to Timothy then, and then Doug and Kovisi.
Yeah, so some comments on the few questions. Number one, percentage of adaptation, it's very low, like very, very low compared to mitigation, and you have to ask yourself, why is that? And I think the reason why is that we are focusing on financing commercial banks, commercial financial institutions, and I don't think they will be the one deploying the biggest amount of money dedicated to adaptation. It's not to say that this is not so much needed, but you have to think about which are going to be the agents that are going to deploy the money on the ground. And that's the reason why on the side of this project, which is focused on commercial financial institutions, we are very much pushing for issuances from sovereign, quasi-sovereign, agency, national banks, because we are convinced that public agents will be the one really driving this investment into climate adaptation. So that's one, finding the right agents. Second, perhaps just on the 2 or 3 billions, is just one reflection from a global investor. emerging market infrastructure is a very, very difficult thing to address and apprehend. There are only a handful of global players who can actually look at a deal like that. And that's one of the reasons why it's so important to have local banks, local institutions that can take on that kind of risk. I'm sorry, it does not address the specific situation, but that's the theory of change behind.
Thank you. Let's hear quickly from Doug and then Kuvisi. We're out of time, so just very briefly, please.
Sure. So on the hydro, I used to work on large projects and also worked on some hydro projects in Chile. And I would say you probably will need a multilateral bank to anchor that financing. You need a very experienced developer and also a very strong offtake arrangement because the ultimate credit's going to be the offtake. So I think you can't do it, I don't think, with all private financing.
Thanks. Concerning the question about the money that we receive, maybe I have not been very clear. We didn't receive 5.3 billion for the government of Canada. It is the total amount of the commitment of the government of Canada. And our initiative is part of this commitment. So the money that we receive is just a small token from that. And concerning the technical assistance that we provide, I think one thing is clear is that we need to build our capacity in Africa. Me, and I'm African and working with Canadian institutions. And from there, I'm building my own capacity also. So for me, capacity building is necessary if we want to have some details, some level of information that will help us to assess the available funding. And for my dear sister at the left, we can support microfinancing if the initiative has a gender component and if you can just demonstrate that you need technical assistance, we can help you. So you just go to our website and send your request from there. Thank you very much, Garrett.
Thank you very much indeed. So I think without further ado, we'll draw this panel to a close. Thank you very much to my panelists, and thank you very much to the audience for staying with us throughout. I hope you found it interesting. Please do come and talk to us afterwards, and invite you to show your appreciation for the panelists and for our first panel as well. Thank you very much indeed. We'll have a quick family photo for the panelists who are still here. Can I retake another family picture, please, with the VP?
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I know. I think it's a problem with the guy. Hi. Look at Sonia.